everyone. Welcome back to our discussion group for The Warrior Prophet, which is the second book of the Prince of Nothing trilogy by R. Scott Baker. We have been reading this series a little bit at a time and discussing it every week. Currently, we are working our way through The Warrior Prophet, 100 pages per week. And today is the final discussion for this book. We're going to discuss the last 100 pages and also everything else that happened in this book, and talk about which of our theories came true and which ones are yet to be tested. The answer to the first question is none yet. But Steve, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Sure. My name's Steve, and I love the series, and it's my second time reading this book, and I am enjoying reading with all of you. And now that I'm on the other side, knowing what happens, it's nice to hear first-time reactions and how close your predictions are or aren't. So glad to be here.
Mike?
Yes, I'm Mike. I'm a first-timer reading the series, and yeah, it was quite a finale to this. Can't wait to talk about it.
And I am Carl, also a first timer. And yeah, I love the Warrior Prophet. I mean, I guess jumping into things a little bit, I thought this had the ending, like the sort of climax I really wanted in the first book. I remember being just a little bit, like I was satisfied with it overall, but just being a little disappointed. I was expecting a little more at the end of the darkness that comes before, and this really gave it. It was a lot.
Mhm. And when you say ending, which do you mean the whole section or like how much of it do you mean? Like, I'm thinking of the last line, which makes something really important, but like what did you have in mind specifically for ending?
I mean, it's just the whole section we read, really. Like if you talk about sort of a book having, a climax in its like kind of final section, I felt that this was a particularly climactic way to end the stories we've been following over the course of this book. While we still have plenty of story to go, it definitely felt like there were pretty clear arcs in this book, and I felt like they paid off in really interesting ways. In some ways I didn't expect, some ways I did, but all I found very dramatic. And then, of course, we got our little last, I think it's an epilogue, right? That was totally unexpected. I did not expect to get all of the info we got there. And that was a delight and had me looking for fan art and trying to avoid spoilers at the same time. And I did. And now I know what something I was struggling to picture looked like, what it looks like. And so we'll get there, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think the last bit had several things that we wanted to discuss. So I almost want to start from the end, but we'll go in order. Um, was there anything from the so what happens in this book? I guess Kellhus gets Alsarva dies and Kellhus gets hanged ish. Achamian comes back home to Esmenet, finds out that he's being um well that Kellhus has taken Esmenet pretty much. And then I guess the fallout from that. And then Nair has a bunch to do in these chapters as well.
Yeah, really. I mean, everyone, Achamian, a lot of what he is doing is talking now after his big explosive moment in the last section. But I think it's very important talking. And certainly Kellhus is, in many ways, kind of his seeds, that he's been watering have blossomed. And, for good or ill, we kind of see the fallout.
Yeah. What did you think of Akamian in this section? I liked I think we talked about this last week, how he changed and stopped caring about the things that used to bother him a lot before. And I love to see that continued, but I was dreading his interactions with Esmenet, and boy was I right to dread them. uh, yeah, I kind of hate how he thinks about her. I had some sympathy for him before in regard to that relationship, but now I'm starting to feel like he doesn't deserve her at all. So Anyway, what did you guys think of that?
Hi there. I feel like I've already talked, so Mike, you want to jump in?
About the relationship, I don't know if I read it the same. I mean, I think it's a fucked up relationship. We all know that.
Yeah.
I can't help but. I mean, I do feel bad for him in a way. The one thing that I will comment on is why did it take him so long to get to them? Like, didn't he take a boat to get to them? Anyway, it seemed like it took a long time. So
Mm,
I kept waiting for that to happen, and I'm sure that but it was well timed because already so much had happened. But I just think she what I don't like about where she is now is that she's enamored with Kellhus and is now going to take the place of Serway in a way, or she already had, and she's now. I think she's become his vessel. That I noticed that word several times, and that makes me uncomfortable.
yeah.
But we don't know what exactly that means. But we do know that she's with child,
Mm,
supposedly his child. But how do we really know that? Maybe she changed her contraception so that when she was with him. So then that's how we know. Yeah, yeah. So I'm a little bit on the fence about the way he reacted to her was not so good, and I think but I mean, uh, yeah, just
yeah.
don't know what else to say about that.
I I I also have mixed feelings about it. I mean, like I think certainly his thoughts, his thoughts were very they reeked with misogyny, certainly, and like the judgments that he's already cast against her is like, a harlot and a whore and all these, the names she's called. But at the same time, he feels betrayed, right? Like he has been hurt by her. But you also, I don't really blame her because she's been manipulated. And as far as she knew, he was dead. And, I more than anything, I think I feel bad for Esmenet, and honestly, I feel bad for Achamian too. Maybe a little less than I feel bad for Esmenet, but he still, thought that. I mean, he thought of her as his wife, and so I think he still is suffering. It's like having your best friend basically you come back home and your best friend has shacked up with your wife. Like that's, I think some of his thoughts, while they certainly they rhyme, you could say, with other judgmental thoughts he's had. I think a lot of it is just driven by his emotion and his pain in the moment. Uh, I don't know. I have mixed feelings. Like I'm not happy with his reaction necessarily. Partially, in fact, I'm not happy because he decides saving Kellhus is ultimately the right thing to do to stop the apocalypse, which maybe it is. I mean, that's the tough moral quandary here, right? And I think it's very compelling, but I don't like it because I don't like Kellhus, and I mean, I found it all just captivating. I was swept off by all of that drama. I found, Achamian reacted pretty much like I expected he would react, to be honest. Um, I, I think the only thing that I was surprised by was he didn't turn his reaction into more self-loathing, or not explicitly so. I was expecting him a lot more to be like, well, of course she thought I was dead, like at least Kellhus was here for, like, almost like treating himself like he deserves, to be cuckolded or something. If you can even call what happened there, cuckolding. I think that, there's a lot of definitely murky boundaries with all of their relationships. None of them are like very rigid, like we kind of traditionally imagined marriages are, right? Because none of them have been legally married or made any vows in that regard. Um, yeah, it's just really messy and very dramatic, and I quite enjoyed it. And the fact, it's very dramatic that, and I mean that in a good way, that like he makes a decision to support the guy who just stole the woman he loves, right? Like that's a very dramatic thing for a character to do that normally we would view as like very self-sacrificial and like heroic. But the trick is we know Kellhus. And so we're like, is it heroic? Like he's not actually a messiah. Or I mean, is he? Is he a messiah? But like their dark, this world's dark, horrible messiah. It's all complicated. It's messy and complicated, and I love it.
So my issue with like why I railed at Achamian that time was that he is just echoing thoughts he had before. It's not just out of anger. It's like, oh, I have confirmation of what I always knew to be true. And that is incredibly disrespectful. Their relationship was asymmetric to start with, and he made no effort. Like I think I talked about this briefly when we talked about doubt. Like for someone who teaches people to doubt, he has a very set view about the place of, I don't know if this is how he feels about women in general, but definitely about Esmenet and the fact that she started out as a prostitute. So this, like, he's not willing to elevate her or think of her differently, and all the thoughts he had about her when returning to her had nothing to do, like, they weren't really affectionate thoughts. They were all, oh, I'm gonna go sleep with her now. So it was very um it was a very objectified view of her, almost to the point where I'm like, did you ever love her, or did you just want to, like her for the physical relationship? And maybe it's fine for that to happen, but I think Esmenet deeply loves him, and I'm sure she gave him some emotional comfort, but he's he's just he's just escaped something really desperate. He's come out from really desperate circumstances, and he's not thinking of the emotional or mental comfort she'll give him, but just the physical comfort. And then as soon as he finds out, like, sure, he was happy that Kellhus would keep her safe, but as long as she's saving herself for him, even if she thinks that he's dead. So like they so the hatred, sure, he's just lashing out, but it felt very cold, not just out of anger, but it felt very cold, at least the way I read it. Maybe I primed myself to that because I was railing at the way he was thinking about, like, is that all she is to you? that So that really bothered me. And but yeah, I think the dynamic between that and what he's trying to do with Kellhus, the sort of self-sacrificing but not really way that he's trying to protect Kellhus. I think the thought he had before that was interesting, where he had this moment of, would I let the world burn to soothe my heart? But yeah, that whole section was interesting, but I'm kind of frustrated at Akamian. I mean, I still think the character's very interesting to read, especially, in the non-Esmenet aspects of how he deals with, like, the way he stood up to the council and like told that story and, stood his own. I appreciated all of that, and I love that the distinctness that we see in the character from earlier, uh, because, like, so he went through something big, and that's reflected in how he's behaving right now. I think that's really well done, but as a person, or just, I think I've started to really dislike him now. um,
Totally fair. I agree with everything you said. The only thing I would disagree about is I do think he loves her for more than just the sex. I mean, I think one of the messy aspects of them is the emotional comfort you're talking about. I think the sex is like it's all tied together in his brain, and I think in her brain too, because I think he defined her exactly, like he flattened her as an individual. I definitely think that's true. I think one of the most telling things, I think we talked about this last time, was that he never tried or offered to teach her to read, right?
Yeah.
And you really, it hits her and it hits the reader, right? Like, yeah, that's like messed up. Why would he not, I think we did see him like try to, he would include her in conversations, even going back to like the conversations with Inrao. So I think there was a level of respect and love he carried beyond it. But I do think it was just mixed up in his internalized, sexism and kind of I do think it's tied into how he views women and how he views prostitutes. And it is really unfortunate and certainly is not the noblest thing about him. Far from it. Yeah, he's an interesting character, a
Yeah,
complicated character.
and he's a teacher who's he it must have occurred to him that he could teach her to read, and he decided not to, right? Or if
I,
it didn't
I don't
occur,
think
yeah,
I don't think it did. I don't think he ever thought of teaching her to read. I think he was like, oh, she's a woman and she's a prostitute. Like, of course she doesn't read. You
yeah,
know, like I
but
I don't think it even occurred to him.
yeah,
Isn't it great though to have these kind of reactions from a story, these conflicting feelings from these characters? And this is why one of the reasons why I think he's one of the more relatable characters, because of how imperfect and flawed he is. But I think giving Kellhus a chance to get his claws into Esmenet is really Achamian's fault, because he left her
yeah,
after he promised he would never leave her again. He just left her again, and then he ran into trouble. And there is a passage somewhere about Esmenet having feelings for Kellhus even before, when Achamian was still around. So kind of get the feeling that Kellhus has been working her for a while, just subtly.
Oh, definitely. He should have brought Esmenet. If he respected Esmenet enough, he should have brought her with him to the library. She maybe would have died. I don't know. She probably would have died, actually. So it probably saved her life. But,
Yeah.
Just in terms of like, as like an intellectual partner, I mean, he doesn't even talk about his emotions. Like again, when we're talking about like the emotional comfort he seeks, I mean, how many of these men or women, really express their emotions, that much, and are like seek the sort of comfort we might typically, associate. Like I really do think it is all wrapped up in sex for them, and just like the physicality of it all. They don't know how to talk about their feelings. They're just emotionally, I mean, they're products of their cultures and products of their trauma.
yeah.
Yeah. So, speaking of trauma, and what was everyone's thoughts on Surway?
Sad.
Yeah.
I'm
Can't.
underwhelmed, honestly, just with her story in general. I felt like she was underwritten until the end and then killed off. Like I've that's my thought. I don't have more to say than that.
I was disappointed um, in a few ways, but I'm also probably not catching things. So if I understood correctly, and I think there's different ways this could have been done, but she was killed because I thought, please let me know what you think. I thought she was killed because she was being blasphemer, because she was saying he was the god. Wasn't until she said no.
Oh, sorry. I think it was because they were trying him for claiming to be of a higher caste than he is, and they were trying him according to the tusk, which the punishment for that is the wife is killed, and the the what the offender is
Okay,
tied to the wife, and they die tied to them. Like that was in one of the epigraphs.
I missed that, so I didn't understand why. Okay, oh boy, yeah,
Yeah, I think because they called him a false prophet, and
yeah,
there is a section 2 where Noir, when he finds out that Survey was killed, he says they were supposed to kill the whore, and that was on page 532. So it sounds like he had a hand in that too, that he plotted to have Esmenet killed to clear the way for he and Survey to be, and I kind of felt like that was also a way for him to hurt Achamian too, if he was still alive. I mean, just to get rid of them. But he wanted her dead, not Survey.
I see.
What did Nair have against Achamian? I forgot.
Oh, I don't think that it's anything specific. I just think he's angry and bitter, hateful. So he just thought,
Mm.
and that was probably just like a bonus for him to, you know,
Mm.
kind of exert his power.
Yeah,
I agree. That's certainly how I read it.
makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, just to touch on the Survey thing, we've talked about how she just hasn't, necessarily felt like she's as well realized as three dimensional as some of the other characters, and to some degree, I think that's an intentional choice. I think to kind of play with this idea of kind of this archetype she embodies. I can't even really think of the right word for it, but kind of like the like the the modern like kind of other sexist term for it is like the bimbo, and it I don't know. I just felt like she never really went beyond that, and that disappointed me. And then to kill her, which is to me like the most obvious thing to do with her, just disappointed me. I was relieved the baby lived. I really thought the baby was dead. The way Baker wrote that whole sequence. I mean, I was sad she died, and I certainly didn't want her to die. But it was, I don't know. That would be a little I think if I were to ratings are so stupid, but like if I were to rate this book, I would still rate it 5 stars, but
Hmm.
with like the caveat that like I'm not actually without my criticisms, but I just found it overall like a really emotional, compelling experience. And like Sir Wei was one of, I think just an overarching criticism for me. And while we're talking about that, my only other thing was I felt like Kellhus's downfall happened way too quickly. People have been talking about it for a long time, but I felt like the chapter itself, I wanted like a little more. It just felt like everything happened really fast, and I just wanted it to be a little more developed. I felt like everything that came after that, when he was just like hanging there in the circle and everything, was like paced really well. But for me, the actual downfall itself, that chapter, happened a little too fast. I almost wanted like another chapter, kind of chronicling all of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. I suppose we don't get to see in detail what they did to him. We just see Survey dead. Next thing, Callus is hanging from a tree, uh, which I think what upset me the most about her death. I I couldn't. She felt pretty caricaturish the whole time to me, and
Yeah.
I I don't I don't see the point of her character in the sense, not that she wasn't useful in the story, but in the sense of I'm not sure what it was he was trying to represent. I still don't know, but but what angered me was that Kellis let it happen, and or what upset me about it, and I think the reason that it happened so quickly could be is it perhaps that Kellis let it happen. So we don't need to see his downfall. Like, if we almost get the impression, I think, from Nayar's point of view later on, that it's not that he made it happen, but he let it happen because he wanted to lead to a certain conclusion, like get this thing over with and get to where I really want to be almost. Like it was somewhat deliberate on Kellis's part. So it almost feels like it went quickly because he doesn't because it's not an actual downfall. It's just something
Yeah,
that he
it's definitely
allowed
part of the
to
plan.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. I just felt like I literally think like the writing of the chapter itself was like to like there was amazing prose, some amazing scenes, including that final scene where Callus is tried. Um, it just like skipped around time a lot. It skipped around the city a lot. We were just like constantly hopping and changing, perspectives, and not just like different perspectives in the same thing, like wildly different days, different events. It was just a lot happened in a short period of time that for me, I sort of had like whiplash
Mhm.
because I felt like the rest of the book wasn't
Yes.
paced like that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. No. No. I would. I definitely agree. I wrote down in my notes like that was a big chapter. There was so much that happened. I think there's a lot going on with Sarcellus as well. Doesn't he get
Yeah.
burned? There's
Yep.
and then Achamian comes back. There's a lot going on with Nair as well. So it's one thing that was interesting to me about with Kellhus, but maybe this is very simple. But so he had all of these bodyguards and the supposedly tens of thousands of his followers, but where were they? I wondered about that, and they didn't seem to show up later when he was hanging from a tree, because I thought there was a lot of buildup with his, and then he has these nine nascenti or what have you. But maybe I was just digging into that too much.
No, I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask. Like, why didn't they do anything particularly? Because they were there when he was tried. Some
Yeah.
of them were. I mean, maybe I do remember them being like kind of held back. But it is kind of surprising that they wouldn't, you know.
They were even guarding him, right? Like when he was hanging from the tree. I thought they were the ones keeping watch.
Yeah, they were
Okay.
kind of sort of protecting him, but
Yeah, but they didn't do anything.
I
Maybe
don't know
he
why they didn't shut him
forbade
down.
them to, or
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
good point.
I mean, maybe all of it was according to his plan. Like the thing with you were saying he didn't care about Sarway. I don't think he ever cared about her once. I don't think he cares. I really don't think it's even mentioned in the what came before section. Like he's not. It's there. I didn't write it down, or I don't remember the exact words, but it's something about how like they're just. It's just about the logos. It's just about the logic and his ultimate goal. He
Yeah.
doesn't. He's good at making it seem as though he's this gentle soul and leader and can quote the Tusk and all of these things. But I'm not. Yeah, he's such an enigmatic character. I don't think I've read anything like that before, but there must be some. That's one thing that's really unique about this whole story. He's just so. It was to me. It's just like quite an idea that Baker had here to come up. I guess he's kind of. This is terrible, but he's kind of like Spock from Star Trek a little bit. Like he's just all logic and not much emotion and all of that. And of course, that's a struggle that character goes through too. But, no, he's really fascinating. It's just, I do feel like there is so much that happened in that chapter. There is a lot of buildup, or there's a lot of description throughout this book about what's happening with the Holy War. The one thing that I found interesting is how everybody is dealing with this famine, and they're all like skeletons essentially. And so I'm very impressed that anybody's able to still fight, because they're eating rats, they're eating leather and books, and that just added so much more attention. I appreciated that. Yeah, I kept thinking that's, and then of course there's also the what's the epidemic going on, hemoplexy or something, similar to, I guess, bubonic plague, or maybe a little different. But all that's going on in the background, which I wanted to say I really appreciated. Not that I like that kind of thing. It's not good. It's really awful. It's happened so much throughout history, famines that are not well documented in parts of the world that people don't maybe realize just over the years. And so I think that's pretty accurate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's brutal. I briefly touching on Serway's death again. I think it was, who was it? Someone, was saying, that like Kellhus sort of allowed it to happen. And I don't even get, like, she didn't need to die. Like, it's not like she inspired anyone. She wasn't like a martyr. He was the martyr. So why did she need to die? Like it just all feels so pointless, which is part of the tragedy of it, certainly, but also is part of my frustration where I'm like, I wanted more from her, you know. If she felt like a more realized character, I think I would have like grieved her more. But I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve? What was her purpose in the story? Or,
Well, I have to be careful with how I answer that. But I will say that I think the whole sequence, I think, Carl, you nailed it. And I was trying to figure out what I didn't like about it, but when you talked about pacing, it does happen very fast. Like it goes from him being followed to he seemed worried, and then Surway's killed, and then he's hanging from a tree, and it just seemed to happen very fast after all this build up, and we don't really see how he was captured or how they managed to get him after he's been so formidable in combat, and it seemed like he could defeat pretty much anyone. He could have killed Noir twice, so it seemed a little like something was missing from the point where Surway's killed to when they're hanging up together. It just like it seemed a little bit jarring that, well, how did that happen? So, but Surway, I think. Okay, let's see how I can answer this. So from this point, I think so. Surway, what has she done to this point, up into her death? So she's given birth to Moengus, which I thought was a little bit of a and that had to have been done to elicit some kind of response too, right? So you wonder if Kellhus did that on purpose, so Noir would push his enemies to push for him to be tried as a false prophet. So there's lots of different things happening because they intentionally told him, they were told to intentionally make sure that he knew they named the baby Moengus. You know, of course, he's going to not have a not so great reaction to that.
For sure.
But it's
Absolutely.
Kellhus being Kellhus, I guess.
yeah.
How do we think he survived? Like, just like, is that a logos thing or like sheer willpower? Like Surway, I mean, maybe she took a more serious wound, but like my understanding is they like flayed Kellhus, like, or the very least, like whipped the crap out of him, and he didn't get, his wounds didn't get infected. I mean, I guess maybe some of his followers, they might have said something about followers coming up and like cleaning his wounds or something. Although maybe I'm making that up. I don't remember. I'd have to reread. But it's just like it seems like he was in a really bad place for like several days, and like I guess through sheer willpower, the logos, I don't know, managed to survive. That was one of my like, yeah, this is a fantasy novel. Like, you know, I guess I'll suspend my disbelief for this one.
He did survive the 7 days with of meditation without food or anything else when he was just a child. We have to assume that his training may have been amped up several times from there. But yeah,
That's a
it
great.
does stretch the imagination a bit for sure.
Yeah, I think what you were saying, Steve, makes so much sense, and I think everything that he does is for a purpose. Pretty much. And if you think about it later, after he's freed, they make a flag of the. I want to say circumfix. Is that the name of the symbol of them? Because it's a circle of the two bodies, and I'm just trying to picture them in my. Maybe I misunderstood. It was a ring of
Yes.
the two of them. I thought they were then. I thought that in my head. Does that mean that they were like wrapped around the tree?
So
But I think they were. I thought they were. I also thought they were hanging. So
they were. So while looking at fan art, I found a picture of the flag. So it's like, the classic
okay.
like Leonardo da Vinci art of
Oh,
like the human anatomy where like the human is like all spread eagle and everything.
okay.
It's Kellet, the flag that we see towards the end, and what they're on is like just a big ring, and that ring essentially holds them spread eagle, and they're
Okay.
pressed up against each other. And so they're both just like they're just tied out like it's like a cross, but instead of a cross, they're like tied to this big ring,
Hmm.
and that ring is hanging from a tree.
Okay. So that, I mean, I guess he wanted that. It became
Yeah,
like the symbol of the cross, which is, as we know, and in Christianity, is a pretty big deal.
for
And
sure.
is that what's going to happen in the next? So I am predicting something here, if it's okay, that um, in the next, I have no idea what happens in the next book, but I'm assuming that his followers are going to overtake the Holy War. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm guessing, because there's so many of them now. There's tens of thousands, and there's only so many left from quite a few that died from the famine and from the illness. Because he's gaining a lot of momentum, and this is going to be enough to push him over, to the tipping point. But then I also have a question which is unresolved, and maybe you all understood it better than I did. And that's the title of the next book. Is there's something about how he has possibly attained the thousandfold thought, and I forget exactly when that happens, but I thought it was right after, might have been right after this. But I don't know what that means. I don't think it's explained yet, but I just feel like the whole Holy War is going to be changing momentum quite a bit. It has been. So to me, that's a trend. I see it just going up, even further. I don't know what that means exactly, but to me, it's just really, this is going to put him over the top.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's what we see at the end is he's basically taken over the Holy War. I
Oh,
think that's
okay.
his whole arc here in this book is him
Yeah.
conquering it, basically, claiming it as his own. They this was
Hmm.
the other lords like attempt at stopping that, and instead they made it inevitable. I think he may not officially be in charge,
Right.
but I think he basically is at the end of it all. It's like at that point they tried to kill him, they failed, they made
Okay.
him a martyr, and now he's the top dog. I mean that's how I read it, kind of at the end of it all, and they all had to kind of accept that they need him. They were convinced, quite reluctantly, that the consult is real and
Hmm.
that he is on a Surnador Kellhus, and they need him to fight. And now he is even more, symbolically powerful, because he, quote unquote, like died and came back to life.
Right.
Even though I guess he never actually died.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Is
that stuff
even
was
even
great.
Confus is? Do we think Confus is convinced?
No, no chance. No, he's reluctantly going along just because he's one of the generals, but I
Yeah.
don't know. He's going to keep scheming. Confis ain't done yet. No chance.
So, what did all of you think when Kellhus was hanging? His inner dialogue, because I felt like that was very. He was almost like questioning how could this have happened, or that was a little bit surprising to me that it's almost like he didn't see it coming, or like he wasn't sure what to do next.
I definitely got the sense that things got out of hand a little bit for him. Like I think he was planning things. Like we know, again, he wanted Nair to find out about the son's name. Like he clearly was like wanting to create his own downfall so he could rise up again. But it seems like things did get out of hand, and exactly where the dividing line is there, I'm not sure. But beyond that, like one of the additional things we know is he started feeling more things. That was really interesting to read. To have him like very explicitly and clearly lose, the logos, to fall into the darkness that comes before, including, something we talked about last time. He seemed to explicitly express affection for Esmenet and his unborn child and his newborn child Moingus, their blood. Like he felt that instant blood attraction, which is, biologically programmed into every species. We got to procreate. And he couldn't, he fell victim to it, I guess you could say. Certainly that would be his point of view, um, which was interesting to see him, to see that flickering of weakness, I guess you could say. Vulnerability is maybe a better word. Um, and I think that troubled him, I probably even more so than everything around him kind of falling apart, because I think to some degree it was part of his plan. I think his internal battle was what was really troubling him, and why he, was really questioning everything. But that's just my reading. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was surprising. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe he thought he let things get out of hand, but more than that, I think what he allowed to happen was intentional, but he wasn't anticipating how he felt about it. Like, I think this whole thought sequence starts with him demanding that commanding survey to breathe, but she doesn't. And then he has this whole dialogue with his father about how he gave her to them, and he says, like, I gave her to them for you. So he uh, it sounds like he allowed it to happen. I don't know whether he wasn't anticipating the feelings that he would experience afterwards, so he's getting the impression that things are in disarray. That's the word he uses. All is in disarray. Yeah, so perhaps he's out of his depth. I mean, they must feel out of their depth sometimes, right? Like, I think that the logos or whatever they follow, I must be about gaining control back whenever you lose it too. There has to be provision for that, I'd imagine. But yeah, anyway, so I agree with everything you said, Carl, but it was very interesting that he's experiencing some emotion here that he wasn't expecting.
I'm
And
so glad you pointed out the Surway thing, because he mourned her there. Like
mhm,
he didn't want her to die. And so that definitely made me wonder, was his plan for her to survive? We know he had I mean, if you remember way back, he had that vision of everything that we questioned: is it magic, or is it just part of his logos? Predicting the future thing, the shortest path, what have you. And we had the head in the air with the sunset, which I now understand to be Nair holding up the consult, Sarcellus's head, and the dead wife we heard about, which is Surway. And I don't know that he necessarily knew that was going to happen. I mean, even though he had the vision, I think in some ways that surprised him too. And maybe that was the aspect of it that felt the most like out of his control. I don't know that I mean, like I said earlier, like it didn't seem like Surway needed to die. So I don't know
mhm.
that that was his intent. You could definitely say he let it happen because he didn't really try to stop it. But I don't know that he went to that trial thinking she was going to die too. I
I
think
mean,
he went there thinking he was going to be martyred.
we know how he is in a fight. He held it together on a hill all by himself in the previous battle that we saw. So he could have hurt all of them and stopped them from hurting Survey if he wanted to, but he used her for a purpose. And I just now remembered, as you were talking about the prophecies, that one of the things that was prophesied was a dead wife, right? So I guess that's Survey.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
we don't we faded to black after he saw all of that, but let's say for a moment that he knew this was coming, or even planned for it, that he plotted, if we go with the theory that it he predicted that, by that he has to take a certain path to get to that point. That means all of this was deliberate to the point of Survey's death. um what was I going to say about that? So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he didn't intend for Survey to die. I think he just didn't intend to mourn her, which he is currently doing.
So I would, where I would argue with you is that I think while he does make plans, I think they can be, and in fact are, imperfect, and that sometimes they're more accurate than others. But like, he has trouble here seeing, predicting the future. Like, he has an explicit moment, I forget where it is, but I remember being like, whoa, he doesn't know what's happening, the future seems shaky to him. And I think one of those, maybe the reason he took two wives is so that one of them could die.
Mm,
So maybe that it's that aspect to it, right? But I don't know that he necessarily specifically intended for Surway to die. His reaction just doesn't, to me, read like that. To me, it's kind of like, again, like genuine surprise and genuine mourning,
mm,
as much as he can mourn, and him willing her to breathe again. Like, that's such a great moment. And does make him feel a little more human, despite how horrible and cold he is. Um, I I don't know. I think he lays out these plans, but I don't know that how everything played down was exactly how he thought it was going to play down. Like I think he set these pieces in motion, but he wasn't sure exactly what the result would be. And that's part of the reason. And in one aspect of it, I think, was that then he emotionally lost control. And I think that really troubled him, probably more than anything, more
mm.
even than Surly's death. I totally am with you there that, like, I think his reaction to it all was probably the most troubling part for him.
Yeah.
But I don't know that his plans are like these infallible, perfect things. I think there is room for error, and I think he's aware of that and becomes viscerally aware of that with how everything plays out.
Yeah, no, I agree that his plans are not quite infallible, but that he more that he saw that this is the end goal. Maybe his vision or prediction or prophecy, whichever it was telling him is that this is the point you need to get to take over the holy war. Because do I remember correctly that that prediction happened before he started becoming a prophet? Because
Yeah,
and we see the dead wife thing is from the law of the tusk, right? So let's say that Achamian has taught him all of that. So that could have been input data to his predictions that he needs to get here. So uh, yeah,
that's an
it
interesting thought.
it's possible that this plan happened to work out, but it is still like, yeah, that's my theory, that it was a plan that he laid out to get here for that end goal, that this is how he wins the holy war. And
Specifically, Surway's death,
mhm.
or okay, yeah,
It's
yeah. I
service
mean, I
that,
don't
like,
know.
all of that, all of his entire vision was around this moment, right? Like, you pointed that out, I didn't realize it until you did, but his entire vision was around when he's persecuted for
Yeah.
being the warrior prophet, and like with the excuse that he claimed to be a prince, right? So that's the end point. Now the holy war is his, and what he was meditating on then was how to make the holy war his own. If do I remember that correctly? So
I don't remember distinctly, but that sounds likely. And I think, again, I would have to reread it detailed to like really look at all of the kind of the foreshadowing and be like, oh, it does map onto everything
mm,
here, because I think it's possible it just kind of maps onto the general plot of this book
yeah.
with some distinct images from this particular section. But certainly there are those images. Like, the head has to be Nair with Sarcellus, right?
Mm.
And the dead wife is clearly Surway. So in that regard, the vision is definitely about this, at least that portion of it. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I don't, I both agree. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I I think there's nothing to say one way or the other. It just, knowing the character, it seems more likely to me that he, if not necessarily planned, he knew that this is what will get him the holy war, and he allowed all of it to happen. The more cynical interpretation, which I think would still apply, is that l- he caused it to happen. And then, of course, there's the third option, which is that some of it, at least, he didn't plan for, but it happened anyway.
That's what I'm leaning towards. Is I think the general events he intended,
Hmm.
but some of the details, including Surway dying, or maybe even like maybe he was thinking Esmenet would be the one who dies. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, I I just think that he seemed suitably surprised. And as for the question of, well, why didn't he fight back? One, I think even he couldn't beat everyone, 1,000 people swarming him. But two, I, it's a lot harder to you know, I think it's a stronger martyrdom to just give in peaceably, as opposed to fighting back. And beyond that, I think it would be harder to stop himself from getting injured in such a way that he could not recover from. I think if he actively fought back, and if someone cuts off his head, like what is he going to do? I don't think even he can survive that. So
And,
I,
I mean,
I, I think that's some of why he went peacefully. That is my speculation there.
and
Yeah.
he was going up against Sarcellus, who we find out later is like this ultimate fighter, because Nair was losing to him. So maybe he knew that.
Great duel, by the way. If we want to transition to Nair's stuff, like I loved his storyline here. I was sad to see, but not at all surprised to see him be like, "Oh yeah, my the solution to all my inner turmoil is to embrace being a monster and to just be the worst man that I set out to be." It was, oh Nair, oh Nair.
Classic.
Yeah. What was it that he figured out about Kellhus's plan? I don't think I understood that.
That
The secret of battle. Kept saying,
Hmm.
is that what that was referring to?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
To
I read that as him knowing that Kellhus was intentionally martyring himself
Right,
hmm.
and was going to survive through sheer conviction.
exactly.
The secret of the
Hmm.
battle, that's how Kellhus survived, was conviction. And that's how they ultimately win the big battle at the end.
I see. I see.
Like Mike was talking about how, these are starving people. What's the only thing they're like feeding on is just their zealotry, their blind religious faith. Like that's what keeps them going. And that's what, made them win, I guess, in the end. It's certainly thematically a potent statement, potent thing that Baker's exploring there.
Hmm.
It's the comes up again later in chapter 25 that the secret of battle is conviction and belief, and a lot of discussion about belief and truth that comes up over and over again, and is even the saying, the truth shines or whatever, which is kind of like a, God be with you, or I don't know what you call it. But that's fascinating to me because all along, I think one of the themes is that truth is a farce, or well, it's the opposite of what Achamian seems to believe, right? Which is you do need to kind of question things. You need to, and it seems that, I mean, this we see this in politicians and leaders, right, all the time. I think this is commentary on that. Is that people that just do have conviction and believe, and maybe they're not always enlightened about what they believe or what they're doing. I don't care if we go into it, but there's a lot of examples out there that we see. It's even in Dune,
Totally.
quite a lot. And I know that not to go completely off on a tangent here, but Frank Herbert was like he was a speechwriter for politicians. I think he just got fed up with, and I just see that here coming up with that even though that seems to win for him here, there is that running theme of this kind of conviction and belief is not necessarily the best thing, but it's winning. It's winning the battle here, and and he's convincing. I have no idea, but throughout so much, at least American history, there's been all of these, um, they're not prophets, but they're like cult leaders and that sort of thing. And if you think about them, they're very charismatic. They're very well liked. They have their they have their conviction. So I do appreciate that theme coming up in here a lot.
Absolutely.
It's really I noted that for especially this last part. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think the parallels to Dune are, a great thing to point out, and totally intentional. And, we know it's a big inspiration for this series, and you can see it. And I think Kellhus is clearly a Paul Atreides figure. And strangely, well, I'm not going to debate which one is better or worse as a person, but I will give this series credit because it's a trilogy. I think it explores the power of that sort of conviction and that zealotry in a way that is even more impactful than Dune does, because you really get to see it play out over and over again and see, different scenarios, how it can shape things and the danger of it. And that it's dangerous because it is powerful, because it does shape the world.
It works.
It works. Exactly. Like it absolutely works. And so it's so easy, to fall into it if you just are convinced that you have all the answers, or this one person you're following has all the answers. And, again, it's warning, like Frank Herbert was, against sort of this unceasing, unblinking belief in charismatic leaders that, like, it's good. And beyond, I think, any individual ideas too, that, you should be more, a skeptic, you could say,
right.
Achamian, sort of the perpetual skeptic, right? Where you challenge your own thoughts and the thoughts of others, and that you don't just accept things blindly, but you're, constantly looking for enlightenment, I guess you could say. But also, I guess part of that sort of train of thought too is that enlightenment is impossible, and that the whole way to kind of attempt enlightenment is like, that's what matters. I guess. It makes you wonder about Kellhus too, because he is, in many ways, he's like a rationalist, but he is a rationalist to the nth degree, where it's like it is a religious belief for him too, right? Like, he's not skeptical about the Logos. He's not skeptical about the darkness that comes before. He drinks the Kool-Aid too, of the Dune Yang. He starts to face some doubts here, right? Like he starts to wonder, like, does it work? What is the 1,000-volt thought? What's all that? But he himself is a zealot, just a zealot of a different ideology, and I think it's really wonderfully explored here, and it's certainly one of the highlights, I think, of this reading experience.
And bringing it back to Nayur, is he's the only one that seems to know what's up still with Kellhus, and he's the one that basically sees not just Kellhus but also the Men of the Tusk as being delusional. Achamian doesn't really know. We know what his thing is, right, with the consult and all that, but he doesn't really know what Kellhus is about. He still thinks, which is one of the things that I found really interesting, is like, so he, towards the end here, does that mean that the decision ultimately that Achamian makes to carry out what was written in the missive from Esmenet, I guess, he didn't have to like stand up for Kellhus there, really. I mean, he is. But so because there was a moment where he's kind of realizes who he is, that he's conning everybody. So he's still kind of wondering what's pushing him, and why he hasn't contacted his people, or why they haven't contacted him.
Well, I can tell you my interpretation of it, certainly, because you raise an interesting point there, is that even Achamian, who is purported to be a skeptic,
Mhm.
and certainly takes pride in that and challenges other people, Proyas most of all, to embrace. He takes his visions, for granted. He takes the prophecy of Onasurimbor, returning and as a harbinger of the second apocalypse and as perhaps the only hope of stopping it. He takes all of that for granted. He or not for granted. He like takes it to heart. He's like,
Mhm.
this shouldn't be questioned. It's fact. And Kellhus, regardless of
It's
his
true.
personal failings, is our savior. He never challenges that thought. He
Right.
never once thinks, well, maybe he's not. Maybe he's hurt by Kellhus because of Esmenet, but he never like he too falls into the same pitfalls of just that conviction. He's like, okay, I have this ideology and of the mandate schoolmen and and of Seswatha. And you can wonder too, is that Seswatha inside of him? Like those memories sort of, I mean, they've clearly shaped his whole life. Like I guess you could call that the darkness that comes before, in a sense, right? Or as a part of it for his version of that, where it's like he can't cut himself off from that. It's all, yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating. They all have their convictions, and oof, leads them astray.
Not to backtrack too much, but we talked about Kellhus and him being tried. When Esmenet comes to warn him that they're going to try him, he tells her on page 519, "Sometimes we must cross death to reach our destination."
Great quote, too. Yeah.
So he knew. He knew what was coming.
It's so interesting to me that Kellhus, yeah, I think he definitely knew that was coming, but that he is this sort of subversion of kind of the Jesus Christ narrative, but the faith he's coming into already sort of has that. I mean, I guess we don't fully know the full like Inri Sejanus story, but we also know he was like a martyred prophet who, preached the modern version of the Tusk. It's just interesting to me that like it's sort of this like almost like repeating narrative, which maybe that's the point, that he's like taking advantage of sort of this like cultural, historical, mythic cycle. Um, but like you have everything down to like Nair being Judas Iscariot and getting paid in silver to betray him, and Esmenet I think kind of fills the Mary Magdalene roles, and it's interesting. Again, just because I mean, on a lot of levels, it certainly adds additional subtext to it all, but that this religion already has their sort of their prophet, and he's now coming in and is like, no, I'm the new big deal, but with the same sort of narrative, I guess. I don't know. We'll see how he changes it, right? Like how he's changing the religion.
Sorry, I was looking at Mary Magdalene. I'm not
She's a prostitute, a former prostitute who followed Jesus in the Bible.
interesting.
I looked
Okay.
her
And
up.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of theology around the idea that she maybe was, there are theories and stuff. Theologians argue about it. Maybe the wife of Jesus.
Mm.
It's yeah. There's a lot around the sort of the lore, you could say, of Mary Magdalene. She's not necessarily one of the like most widely talked about figures, not like Jesus or
Mhm.
the Mother Mary, but she has an interesting place. And I wondered, as soon as Esmenet was introduced as a prostitute, if that's what we were going to get. And indeed, that is what we have gotten. We'll see where her story goes. I don't know. I have no idea still what he wants with her. Is it truly, does he just like actually kind of care for her? Like, I don't know.
I thought um I don't know, this seems almost as dumb as the one where he probably cares for her, but the does he just want her to have his child? Is
Maybe. Yeah.
that's a potential purpose for her now, but I don't know. It's weird.
She is a vessel. So
Yes.
is
Oh,
that
Oh, that, One thing I wanted to apologize for last week. I for some reason thought she was like 39, 40, and I saw on the glossary she's like 31. So yeah, she's totally like easily can have kids. I for some reason was under the impression she was like a decade older than she is. But she is not. It's just the way she talks about her. It's the sexism again, right? Where she's described as like aged and things, and it's like, oh my god, she's 31 years old. Like she's younger than my older sister. Like she's younger than my older brother. Like it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing about it, right? I don't know. I didn't think. I thought she was in her late 20s because I don't know if it was this book or somewhere else, but apparently, for a prostitute greater than 25 or something, I think it was in this book, is considered old. So anyway, uh, new topic. The when Kellhus is hanging from the tree, the no god talks to him, or he hears the no god like Achamian does. So is he starting to see Seshwat as dreams? What do you guys know what happened there?
He was dreaming, right? I think he was
Mm-hmm.
dreaming. Yeah, that was really something. I don't know what was happening. I was going to ask you all. But maybe there is some connection between his people and Saswatha, I think, because they were from the same time.
Hmm.
So maybe, but yeah, it's a good question.
I think
Maybe Achamian taught him enough things so that now he can channel Saswatha. I don't know. I doubt it.
he wasn't.
He didn't.
Go ahead.
He didn't give him that, right? He didn't give him the gnosis. Like
Okay.
that was the one thing he'd yet to do. He was planning on teaching him the gnosis, but he went off to the library. So he just like, I mean, yeah, I don't know if he managed to like transmute what Achamian had taught him somehow in to like touching the gnosis. I don't know.
Or has the no god become powerful enough that one doesn't have to be a mandate schoolman to feel that he's around?
Hmm.
Or is he seeing prophetic visions?
Oh, you know what? I bet that's what it is. That hadn't even fully occurred to me. But I'm telling you, that one at the start of the book, like I don't think he's just calculating things.
Yeah.
I think he's seeing the future. Like this is magic shit. Like we're past the like, oh, I'm sciencing the shit out of this. Like
I think, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say the thing with a dead wife and a severed head against the burning sun is prediction, not prophecy. The other stuff seems, and I don't know if this happened in this book. Nameless schoolman climbing a steep gravelly beach, that hasn't happened yet, right? A nipple pinched between fingers, whatever the heck that means. A gasping climax, I assume that's related to the nipple. Apparitions marching out of a severed head, we already talked about. Apparitions marching out of morning mist.
Wait,
Those are all the things
where
that I
is
think haven't happened.
that
in the
prophecy?
In the Kindle book, it's page 271.
It's in here.
Chapter 9. It's the end of chapter 9.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Don't forget we have another severed head with the Martimus. He gets beheaded too.
Oh, you're right. It could be Martinus.
And Confus keeps the head.
But I think also isn't. I think we have three heads. Isn't there a Sarcellus? The thing called Sarcellus. Isn't he decapitated too?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's the third then? Because that was the first one we named.
Oh, well, what's the head that is that the head that Achamian has? Because I thought he picked it up much earlier.
I think he just had the spider minus the head. But for Sarcellus, was it the head or the spider?
Both, yes, all of the above, because that's what it is.
Face spider.
It's like it's hard to picture, and I still like I don't believe I necessarily can. But the spider like curls up and forms a head.
Mhm.
And is that the consult? Is that the creature?
Yes,
So whatever got
seems fine.
burnt, that thing is dead. But as long as it's able to escape from the body, it is
Yes.
alive. Okay.
Yes. And this is, again, remember, this is not the thing called Sarcellus. There was one before who
Right.
died. And then this is the number 2.
Well, and then, so the thing before is the one that was posing as Kellhus, right?
It is the same one. The
Yeah.
Same
current
one.
Sarcel is also posed as Kellhus. Yes.
But
Yeah.
so do we think that the face is dead? This face is definitely dead? I'm not sure.
It seemed dead.
Did it crawl away in the end? I forget. I forget what happened
I
to
need to
King
go back.
Sarcellus.
I don't think it disappears. I think it gets like burned or something.
Hmm.
Steve, what happens to the face hugger?
That would be so pathetic, I'm going to be honest, if Nayer's like holding this thing up like, look at this, and then it's just like it escapes. Like, no, because then Achamian burns it. It's the same one, right?
Okay.
That's then Achamian shows it, it's dead, and then
I
they
thought
burn
those two happen in parallel. I thought those two things happen in parallel. Because Achamian was showing the thing. So Kellhus sent Achamian to find a burnt one in the yard. Achamian took that to the council. And what was happening in the council, Sarcellus was repeating, except Nair caught him out on it and said, "How do you know that? I followed you."
Yes.
So wait, are
He
there
hadn't
3
said that.
Sarcelluses then?
No, I think there are several consult. The one that Achamian held up might have been a non-Sarcellus consult, right?
Okay.
I think it was. Yeah.
Where did he get that one?
That's
I don't remember that.
That's what I couldn't remember. But I'm pretty sure it was a different one because it was like rotting and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how it got there, but Kellhus sent Achamian to the yard or somewhere to go get it. But I don't know
That
how it
sounds
got
right.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
So the
That was a cool
consult
scene.
is like 3 different. There's like 3 different like beings. One is this face thing. One is the bird with the pink head, little crow, and the third one is what's in the very last chapter. Is I understood, which was the inquiry, like with this,
which is this face thing,
with a thing that's like sliced, the head that's sliced with another face, like.
I had to look it up. If you guys don't want to, I didn't get spoiled on anything.
I can't do it.
It's basically like if you've seen any of the Aliens movies, it's like one of those xenomorphs. If its face where its mouth is had a human face inside.
Yeah, well, I was thinking xenomorph.
Basically, it's like a human head wearing one of the xenomorph heads. Is kind of what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaky. It's cool. I'm not gonna lie. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's what it is. And like, okay, that's cool. It's very fantasy. Like it looks a little goofy, but it also looks really cool. I was here for it. There's some cool fan art out there. I was surprised.
What did you search for the fan art, or like what was it fan art of?
I think I did Warrior Prophet Inkaroi or something like that.
You want to look it up, Varsha?
Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, yeah, they're I definitely got some fan art of the scene with Kellhus and Surway and the ring, and then Nair with the head. There are a few cool, people have drawn some stuff. I was pleased with the finds. So my understanding is the thing we see at the end is that's one of the consult, and that is one of the Inkaroi.
Right.
The Synthes may also be one of the Inkaroi. The bird with the old man's head. They, through Techne, which is called the old science, which may or may not be magic. It may just be some mad science stuff. They make the skin spies because they're like sci-fi aliens. I mean, I literally think they're almost like the xenomorphs if they were slightly more intelligent and like all of that stuff in a fantasy setting. Like they like for whatever reason came to this world and decided it was going to be theirs. And then they got involved, we found out, with the no god. They did not come with him. They were separate, and then they found him and decided, we like you. You're going to work for us now.
I thought he was awakened by not the Inkaroi, but humans who learned the arts of the Inkaroi, right?
Well, the Inkaroi didn't the Inkaroi try first, and then they got beaten, and then the humans went and found him after that. After the Inkaroi had been fought back.
So the same place. So they built something somewhere. What was that? And these guys went and disrupted it and awoke the no god,
Yeah.
right? What did they build? There was a hole in the world. It was of another realm, they said.
Yeah, the Nomen did the whole magic, like locked away sort of. There was a glamour, I know, so that no one could find it. And
It's
where
Golgotha.
yeah, where that place is. We got yet more names for it. I can only remember. Yeah,
There was a huge exposition dump there.
I enjoyed it. I liked getting to hear that history. Like, it reframed a lot of things, definitely, in an interesting way.
Is that the same place where Sauron had his vision?
No, that was the plains of Mengeda.
Okay.
Which is where the final battle with the no god happened, versus where I think that's where they were trying to resurrect him, but that's not where he originally was.
He died
released.
there.
Yeah.
So Golgotha, that sounds familiar. Have we seen that name before?
It's on the map.
Yeah.
Oh.
It is the consult place. Like it's Mordor. It's Mordor. That's what we've been hearing, and we've heard it referred to as Golgotha, however you say it.
Okay.
A good number of times.
It's at the very far north, and actually just south of there is also mentioned in this section where I assume is where the non-men still live, which is Injor Nias. Maybe that's the name of the region, and then the town is Ishtarabinth. I do like maps. I look at when these places I mentioned, I'm like, where the heck is that? And I was, lo and behold, this, some of the names, I couldn't find on there, but this non-men stronghold or area and Golgotha are both on there.
Which the talk of non-men, who I'm excited to see more of eventually, but we did get this. Some of them are working with the consult now.
Yep.
That was made me sad. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, not that we got good vibes about the non-men, but they were fighting with the humans before, and now they're at least some traitors. Not good. Not good.
I thought the non-men were the cons. No, they weren't. But I thought they were always with the consult. No? Is that not right?
Unless my memory is incorrect, which is very possible, our only understanding was they fought against the consult. The consult are, I think, have become clear, are the aliens. Or maybe they're just part of, I don't know, the consult's probably just a name for the order at this point, right? Because we have the term Inkaroi for the race itself of aliens.
Is the consult the descendants of that school that Achamian mentioned? He mentioned one school of sorcery who the followers of which went and reopened that place and awoke the no god. Is that who the consult is?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a dense
We need
section.
some diagrams.
I was told by you all that I don't need to read too deeply into this, so I just read through it. I think once I could have, gone back, because I get caught up on some of these names big time.
I think we're doing a little break between for the next couple weeks before we start the 1,000-volt dot, and I think during that I maybe am going to reread some of these little sections at the end,
Nice.
kind of
Yeah.
dig into the first apocalypse a bit more.
The prologue.
It's very
Yeah. So I want to start a new topic, but before that, quick question. I thought Cinemas had his mouth hurt or something. That's why he said bees when they had him. But then the people in the end also said bees instead of please let us go. So what is that word?
No, I think it is please. I think you're right. I think they just had their mouth hurt, and that's how Baker writes it in like kind of a slightly goofy way. I
Okay.
mean, I read it the same way that it's just please, but their like teeth are punched in.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. So do the Norman or the consul, who is it, says that we are a race of lovers. We've seen that before in an epigraph. I have to say this is really far away from any imagination I had of what a race of lovers might be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, not in this. Yeah, it's a different culture, I guess. So
yeah.
we also
They
get a description of the strength too. But sorry, no, they get turned on by death, destruction,
By everything,
apocalypse.
apparently.
Yeah,
everything.
it could
Yeah.
be maybe. Yeah, it's still unclear to me what that. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that was a really twisted. I was I mean, usually in poetry, which is where we first encountered this concept of a race of lovers, it's meant to be something romantic slash poetic, something nice, that some actual love associated with the term. But oh my god, this was so twisted when compared to, I guess, what the default interpretation might have been in poems. I don't know. What did you make of it?
It definitely feels ironic. I mean, I'm with you. It's wow. Yeah.
Are you referring to the necrophilia that
It
happens?
just everything. So the consult, whenever we've met them, first all the things that Sarcellus, the thing called Sarcellus, gets turned on by. He wants to kill people, and then I think he said something to that effect to Nair or Kellhus too about what he'll do with Survey. And anyway, we got a bunch of impressions from him about all the things that turn him on, none of which was anything remotely good. The I think the crow person at some point does something that was disturbing, and then the consult who slept with Esmenet. I don't know if that's the same one. Was that Sarcellus too? And then finally, what happens here? The rape scene in the end.
Yeah,
All of that is disgusting, borderline disgusting, and not borderline. It is disgusting, and the creatures who indulge slash engage in these activities are calling themselves a race of lovers.
yeah. The last chapter we would be remiss if there wasn't a reference to Black Seed.
Oh yeah.
Anytime I read it, I have to vomit a little bit in my mouth.
I wrote down black jizz, but
Yeah.
I'm not a writer. I'm not.
Very poetic.
Just as poetic as race of lovers. Oh my god.
Well,
That seems like such a twisting of that phrase. That's all. That
it's
those are my feelings on it. I'm it's hard to wrap my head around this is who is meant by this phrase.
No.
It also almost makes it worse, right?
Yeah.
That they call themselves a race of
Yeah.
lovers.
Yes, absolutely. Do you guys have any theories about what their deal is? Like why they're so afraid of the consult? Like, do they just think the consult is like the only group powerful enough to, or not? Sorry, not the consult, the Sisharim, because they're essentially orchestrating this whole holy war to destroy the Sisharim. It seems like the consult are. So I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are on that.
Is that tied to the fact that I think it became clear in this section that the reason they thought they were spies, that the spies of Caesarium were not because of the face thing, but because you can't see their sorcery, right? That's so. Do the Caesarium have the techne magic thing? So is that what makes them fearsome?
Oh, interesting thought. That they can identify them.
They cannot
Yeah, I don't
be
know.
perceived by the few. The Sisharam are not.
They
Is
cannot
that
be,
the
or they
right
can.
is that the right wording?
Yes,
It's in there. Yeah.
cannot be. Yeah.
Yes, they're not viewed as magic users.
I mean, yeah, they clearly have the magic, but it doesn't. It works differently, so they are not.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the bruising that appears, I guess, on the other magic users, including the mandate schoolmen.
So,
Which we don't know what's up with that. I suspect we will find out in the next book, but we currently do not know. That's my theory. I'll drop a theory. We're going to find out why we don't see the mark on them next book. We'll figure out what's going on with the Sisharim.
Yes.
I do not think we will have to wait until the next series. This was a mystery set up early on.
mm-hmm.
We will find out.
Do you think that we're going to see more of the other side of things? I think you mentioned that, Carl. I don't know if it was the last chat or earlier, but I totally agreed with you. I wanted to know. I want to know more about the Kianin, the Sisharim. We just get little glimpses. I'm not convinced that they're. I'm not convinced that they're bad. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm not convinced that they're the bad guys, or I don't know if that's the right way of putting it. But like, what are their motives? I guess they've taken over part of. They view Sejanus as a false prophet themselves, or they reject him. So they're it's just another belief system. But we don't know. There's so much questions on that side of things that I have, including obviously Moingas, and whether or not he. You talked about it the last time in depth. It was really intriguing. Moingas is not training the Sisharim as though they're Dunyain, but is maybe giving them something. We don't know what. We don't. Well, they're people with no eyes, and they have snakes. I don't. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't connect. I don't see the connections, yet with Moingas and the Dunyain and all of that, and then at the very end, of course, the consult still don't have any clue who the Dunyain are.
I am increasingly convinced that the reason Baker is not showing us their point of view is because it would give away all the secrets.
Right.
And that, because that's where Moingas is involved and has his own sect. They have this mystery of the magic of why, you can't see them, even though they're one of the few, technically.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just because all the secret, and it's wrapped up with the consult stuff now. I think that's why is, we're surrounded by a bunch of people who don't know what's going on, even Kellhus to an extent. Kellhus knows more than a lot of people, but he's a fish out of water, right? Like he didn't know magic was real until he left home. So I think that's why we're not seeing it, is because the Sisharim lie at the center of a lot of these mysteries.
Steve is smiling.
Which is still like I would I like when we see more of them, but I understand now why Baker has been keeping them at arm's reach.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm with you, Mike. I don't think they're the like bad guys per se. I
Mm.
mean, you know, they are antagonistic to the characters we follow, but they're just another faction. I mean, I don't wouldn't call them the good guys either. Like I'm sure we've seen them; they have slaves and things. Like like I think they're
Yeah.
just they're just people, but potentially people who pose a real threat to the consult, which is interesting.
Mhm. Right. That's why I said it's not the right word, but they're it's yes, they pose a threat exactly, and they need to be crushed.
They need to be crushed.
Oh my God! You know what just occurred to me? They totally killed the head of the Scarlet Spires because he was like a skin spy or something. I bet that's why they assassinated him. We haven't had that confirmed, but I'm willing. I would put that money down. Theory established. I'm sure we'll figure it out next book. But that's been one of the things. Why did they kill the head of the Scarlet Spires when there was a peace and starting this war? I bet they did it because he was consult
Hmm.
and they were like, taking out the enemy. They're waging a secret war against the consult.
Hmm. The guy we found out that what's his name, Keferamuni, isn't he? He's like the same from the same region as the Scarlet Spires. I think is that who you're
Yes.
referring to? Because we find out
No,
that he's a skin spy,
Ellie, we do. That's right. The
Eleazarus.
guy who was top dog before Elizaris, because he was not the top dog. He took over from someone who was.
Hmm. Which was
Who?
Um,
start with an S, Scaladius or something like that.
yeah,
Mm.
that because that's what we find out right in the opening of the first book. Right in chapter 1,
Hmm.
when we first meet Achamian, he finds out from the spy in the Scarlet Spires that their leader just got killed, and not only that, he got killed because they couldn't see the mark on the Sisharim.
Hmm.
Um,
Did they tell us how he died?
the Sisharim,
No, I
they said
mean, did he set him on fire or something? I'm thinking if he was consult or skin spy, would they have sacrificed themselves to not show that they exist? If I remember correctly, we got an Elisarius POV which talked us through that scene. Maybe we cut off before we could see the skin spy release themselves, but then he's also sufficiently surprised by the skin spice that may not be the case. But yeah, I was trying to think if they were killed in a way that wouldn't reveal the existence of the skin spy, but maybe
I don't
that's
know.
not necessary
I don't know.
It's the beginning of chapter 23. Um,
in this book.
I mean, I know we know that
yes.
Elizaris thinks the skin spies are Sisharim. Like
Mm,
he's convinced that's their thing. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I guess you're right. Like it would have had to have been destroyed, right?
mm,
Because otherwise they would have seen their leader had that face.
mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe part of it could also be that maybe he wasn't a skin spy, but was, something else, like a human aligned with the consult, right?
Yeah,
Rather than like, I don't know. This is just a theory.
no, that
It's
makes sense.
not
Yeah.
foolproof, but like, that's been one of the mysteries. Like, why did they start this war when there was peace? I think that would be reasonable
Mm,
with what we know.
yeah, yeah.
So many strands.
I'm,
They
I'm
even
excited for the next book. Yeah.
oh yeah.
We're gonna get a lot. Yeah, I expect a lot of answers in the final book.
Hmm.
A
Mhm.
lot of mystery still, particularly around, I imagine, the consult and the non-men and all the Lord of the Rings lore.
Mm,
Uh, but I think with the Holy War and the Sisharim and Moingus, we'll get a lot of answers.
yeah.
I can't help but think not everything is going to be solved because what the heck is the next 4 books?
Yeah.
I can't help but think that. So there's got to be, not everything's going to get resolved, I suppose, but
For
hopefully
sure.
a couple of these big ones are going to come through. And we know that most of it, a lot of it takes place in Shima. I think I kind of read the table of contents, and
Okay.
there's a
Okay.
Shima map. Uh,
Yeah.
Not to go too far ahead, I don't want to get in trouble.
Last
That
five
adds up.
chapters are Shima.
Just want to say really quickly for anybody listening, the synopsis on I read the synopsis on one of the books in the second half of the series, and it spoiled some things for me. So be very careful
Yeah.
The synopsis for. I'm sorry.
of the book on the back of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It's not like major, but I like to be surprised and kind of experience it. So if you're like me and you avoid spoilers at all costs, then just be careful with them.
Okay.
What about there's a very long section of what came before in the next book? That's okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good to read those. They add on a little bit more, but it's very subtle. So it does evolve as you get through the series, and it adds in more and more detail and things that are relevant to the book you're about to read. So those are good, and they helped me stay on track with all the lore and the story, and then it's neat because you get a little bit more every time, so you get little bits and pieces of information.
Definitely.
Nice. Is there as much battle in the next book, Steve?
I don't remember there being a lot of battles.
Might at least be at Shime.
There's battles, but it's not as. It's about the same. I don't remember really being bothered by too many battles, so it must not be too much more.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't like battle scenes that much, but every chapter that started with the high level overview battle things, I had to plow through it. Like, let's get to the good part.
I felt the same, and there was a few times when I was like, okay, this is building up some tension here, but
Yeah.
that would be one of my biggest gripes. Is there are pages where I'm not tuning in too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Not that they are badly written or anything.
Right.
I think they are great. I just battle doesn't
Follow.
interest me. And yeah.
You know, like he intentionally throws a lot of like
Yeah.
new names at you, and you're like, oh, okay. It's honestly it's hard to picture a lot of the maneuvers. Like, short of you describing them very specifically and carefully and non-poetically, and even then oftentimes it takes you, kind of, at least it takes me a bit. I read a lot of history books, and like when they're describing battles, even when they're very blunt about it, it takes a minute to kind of like picture the battlefield and like make sure you kind of have an idea of where everyone is, and that's just made way harder by the fact that then he gets poetic about it, and so it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm just getting the vibes generally, like who's winning, who's losing, what's going on here.
Yeah, I think that was all I looked for at the end of the section. An understanding of who won. The last one, the Padi Raja dies, right? So
Yes, he's
who's
killed by Kellhus.
he's the dude who's ruling in Shime, right? Or who was supposed to be. But some of his heirs ran off. Or
No,
is he not?
he doesn't rule in Shime. He's just like for the real life equivalent, right? Like it the Ayyubid. No, is it the Ayyubid or the Abbasid? Okay, whichever caliphate was in charge in like the First Crusade that ruled over Jerusalem, like they weren't based in Jerusalem. It was just that Jerusalem was like one of the cities they happened to control. And so, they had their capital elsewhere. So he's like based elsewhere, but he is defending Shime because he owns it. It's like one of his cities.
I see. But he's the lord of Shime. Like, he's the first person of Shime. Is
I think he's like the very top dog, but I'm pretty sure there's someone else who's like the governor.
okay.
Like I want to say the term they use is like Sapatisha, I want to say is like in charge of like particular territories
Mm.
within. Um,
Kaskamandri is the Padiraja. I thought he was the top dog
no,
too.
he's the top dog.
Okay.
Like it's like king versus like feudal lord is my understanding, right? And the Padi Raja I think is like the king, and the Sapatisha is like the feudal lord. And my understanding is there's a Sapatisha of Shime who maybe died. I don't know. I don't know if that guy's died yet.
Is
I,
mowing
I
is the Zapatisha of
maybe, yeah, I don't know. What's up with Mathanet? We still don't know. Is Mathanet and Moingus, are they the same person?
no,
I increasingly think probably not, but
I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
so. But
Yeah. Yeah, I
What are
don't
your
think so.
theories?
That theory is losing water more and more.
What are your theories now for the last book? I'm curious. I've told you some of mine.
For the last book, I the thousandfold thought, we talked about that briefly. I Not that there is any remote clue as to what it might be, but
hmm,
it seems like it has something to do with developing a huge following because he decided that he knows or understands the thousandfold thought when people were like basically cheering him and saying, "Oh, I don't know, I imagine long live the warrior prophet." But I assume it has something to do with developing a following. So there's that. I don't know.
Maybe it's like
Hmm,
maybe it's like because yeah, I remember that section too. Maybe it's like when everyone's thoughts sort of become one, like
hmm,
they all fold over into each other, like they're thousandfold. And so it's like when 1,000 are directed by one, and they all have the same thought.
hmm,
hmm.
in
The
unit.
thought of their leader. That's just my best guess. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I think that that's similar to what I was thinking as well. Um, I wondered, what do you think? Will Esmenet have her baby in the next book, or will that go over into the next series?
A baby's gonna die. I feel I'm gonna I don't want it, but a baby's gonna die.
A
I
baby.
I don't
So
know if it's gonna be Moingus. I don't know if it's gonna be Esmenet's baby. Something's gonna happen. A baby will die. That's just this is a Grimdark series. That's the like that's the gun on the wall. A baby, something horrible is gonna happen to a baby.
I think
In the
uh,
next book, the predictions.
in the next book or
A
the
baby will die next
next
book, you think?
series?
Or next series?
I,
Who do we think is gonna
But
die?
Oh,
Is that what you
do you think a baby will die in the next book or the next series? What would be
Oh,
your?
in the next book,
Oh,
I think one of the two babies will not survive the next book. If they both survive, I will be shocked. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. I would be very pleasantly surprised if uh, both of those babies survive. And of course, if they do, they're going to survive and then grow into like tyrants or something. Like that's what we're dealing with here. So I don't know. I'll
so
be wishing that they died.
I decided I like your theory that Kellhus will go become uh the king of Shime. But who do you think the aspect emperor is going to be? Do you think, I forget his name now, the emperor Ikurai Sirius. He keeps having these dreams that he wants to be aspect emperor. Do you think Confus will be aspect emperor?
No, not a chance. That dude's gonna try so hard, but he's just gonna fall on his face. Nah. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say Kellhus, but who knows?
Mm,
Like, there's a whole other series, so there could be a bunch of new characters. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
I
I,
think it's one of his children.
mm,
Oh, good. That's a good guess. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm on board with that.
The Anasurumbur will rise again. It's-
May not this yeah this Nasarimber could be. Do we know for certain? We assume it's Kellus, but
yeah.
We don't know that for certain.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're going. I have a theory that is this. Okay, not a theory, but The prophecy, I feel like the mandate schoolmen are too keen to believe that the Anasurimbo returning is going to save the world, or at least Achamian is. All the prophecy says is that an Anasurimbo will return at the end of the world. Nothing about
Yep.
whether they'll cause it, whether they'll save it, whether
Yep.
they'll be involved in it at all, just that they will exist at the
Ding, ding,
time
ding.
of
We have a winner.
the
I agree 1,000%.
so So I don't know. I feel like all the Akamian trying to teach Kellhus things so that he can save the world is going to backfire big time. So that's my theory, I guess, for either the next book or the next series.
I agree.
What else? Mike, some theories. Then we'll ask Steve for quotes.
Oh, let's-
I don't have a theory, but I'm very curious why Achamian doesn't get in touch with his people. And is that going to happen in the next book? I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with them. I'm curious because
Oh
he
yeah,
hasn't really been very forthright with what's going on.
yeah, yeah. I like how the mandate schoolman got caught in the crossfire of Akamians. I don't care anymore. Rampage.
I kind of like Achamian at the like post torture, just like I don't give a shit anymore. He's
Yeah.
been freed.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. I think it's about time the other mandate schoolman got involved in this thing, right? Or maybe that's a thing for the next series. I don't know.
It's alluded to quite a lot, and
Mm,
then there's nothing happens.
yeah.
So
We have to deal with learning about Kellhus though. Like
Mm,
I'm with Mike on that. Like that has to come up next book. Kellhus he's now like super famous. You know, I suspect that will happen. Um, what do you guys think will happen? So Camian we know survives and writes a history book. Okay, we know at least that much. Who knows exactly, but we know he survives and writes a history book of the Holy War. What do we think happens to Esmenet and Nair? Live, die? What rise, fall, or Proyas and Confis for that matter? Do we think any of them die?
I don't
I
know
think
about
some die.
die, but I think some of them will become irrelevant for after the next book. Like, yeah.
Nair has doomed to me written all over him.
definitely.
I think he dies, if not in the third book, early on in the next series. I don't think he makes it very far. But if I had to choose between the two, I think he dies towards the end of the next book.
Yeah, that's the other big confrontation, right? Nair and I almost said Maithanet. Nair and Moengus. And that's the other confrontation that I think that one may be even slightly more intriguing than Kellhus and his father.
I agree. I totally agree. I think I also am more interested in that, and I think Nair will confront him, and I don't think he'll be able to bring himself to kill him.
Do you think Moengus will
That's the
kill
theory.
him or
I think that is
Kellhus?
a very real possibility. I think there's a very real chance that either Moengus or Kellhus kills Nair, and if I had to bet between the two, I would bet on Moengus.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, that's just so like ripe for like drama, you know, like that this has been driving him, like his demon, and then to go and then whatever happens, whether he does end up fighting him or not being able to kill him or what have you, and then Moengus literally kills him. The thing that has been eating him alive is what gets him killed.
Hmm.
It's very Greek tragedy, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's another theory. All right, there you go.
Okay.
Proyas, I think will live out. I don't know. I'm unsure. Confis, I feel confident will live. Esmenet, I also think will live because they killed Surway, and I don't think Baker is going to kill the only other significant female character. I don't think he has that in him. uh,
Hmm.
and I suspect she will be in the second series.
Hmm.
Proyas, yeah, I don't know. Proyas could go either way.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Proes, Achamian and Proes, that conversation they had where Achamian said, I don't care anymore. There are things bigger than you." So yeah, all of these things made like the badass aspect of Achamian. I really was enjoying slash appreciating. Funny he was kinder to Esmenet.
It that whole scene frustrated me so much though, because like I totally understood why he was being that way, and like I like Achamian being more active and just like screw it, I'm gonna make things happen. But he was so condescending, and it was like you could influence him so much more if you talk to him. Like I don't think he even realizes how vulnerable Price is emotionally right now.
Hmm.
And if he just like, I feel like if he really reached out, he had a moment there and he totally blew it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's kind of his own worst enemy.
For sure.
I mean, so many of the characters are flawed.
Yes.
You know, that's what's
I
beautiful.
mean, all
That's
of
what's
them in
beautiful
different
about
ways.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's so human.
Absolutely.
I think that. So I think that Moangus is this other person's name, Malahet, who's the head of the Kisharim. I think that seems kind of obvious though, but we have not. That name has not been used since book one from a long time ago.
Oh,
But that's why I think
okay.
that's why I think he is.
The head of the Caesarum.
Yeah,
But if
but maybe
that,
that's too obvious.
I mean, I like that, but also if that were true, he said the dude who met Kellhus said there's a subsect within the Caesarum, right?
Hmm.
That um that knows of, that is aware of the logos, and maybe the head has reason to only share those things with a subset, or has Moengus infiltrated the
Hmm.
Caesarum in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's the only other name I could find. So maybe you're, yeah.
the I don't come up with theories of my own. I just quash other people.
Yeah. No, it's a, yeah. I mean, what you said, Carl, is what I thought from book one is that Kellhus is priming himself to take over. Or I think I said he's going to fight for the other side. I feel like,
Mm,
I think that could happen still.
mm.
Because I don't know if maybe I need to reread the section, but I was not convinced yet. I think there's still factions within the Holy War, but I kept thinking, well, in the next book, um, because the faction, there's the Orthodox and the Zadunyani that's been brewing for it to just be quickly over, and now everyone is going to follow Kellhus. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case yet. That was what was convenient at the time, I think. But we'll we'll see.
No, there'll still be conflict, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It's not they're not done,
Nope.
grasping for power.
Mhm.
I mean, Confis is still there, and we know Confis is going to be on his same old
He's
shit.
a schemer. Yeah.
So, yeah, that dude never stops. It's in his blood.
We haven't heard from his people, the emperor, for
Good
a while.
point.
I guess we
Good
are
point.
separated, but who knows if he'll show up again, and his dear mother.
And his dear mother.
Yes.
Yeah, their fleet got destroyed by the Padi Raja's
Hmm,
ships, right?
I think
But
so.
he wasn't on the ships, but maybe he'll show up eventually. I feel like he feels more like a sit on my behind and watch from afar kind of person, but we'll see.
For sure.
Um, so quotes, Steve. Many quotes.
I have a couple. I really liked on 5:14. The Noir was fantasizing, I think, about carving his nose the way a child may draw in the mud.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool. A couple of the ones we talked about. Sometimes we must cross death to reach our destination. Lie made flesh. That was repeated a few times. One that I liked a lot was on 585, which is emptiness always laughed.
Hmm. Nice.
What's the context for that?
I forget exactly, but 585.
Okay.
I liked the one when Proes yells at the council to listen to Achamian, and there was a passage about how he was always the calm one who never lost his cool in a council meeting, and so it was like children going silent not because of what their father had done, but because of what they made their father do, or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
That was brilliant. Any others?
All the ones I've written down. I'm sure there's other ones in there, but
Yeah.
those are the ones I wrote down this week.
I had one. It's a short one. For men, no circle is ever closed. We walk ever in spirals.
Hmm.
That's a great one.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
that stood out to me too.
Cool. So, if that's everything, we are going to meet in 2 weeks to talk about the first 4 chapters of The Thousandfold Thought, which is the third book in the trilogy. Until then, where can people find you? Starting with Steve.
Yeah, you individually asked you just not a thing. You can find me on pagechewing.com and join our forums. And if you'd like to join us for these, we have a 2-week break, so it's time to catch up.
Mike.
Yes, I'm also can be found on Page Chewing forums, and you can listen to me and Steve discussing our weekly comics. We might also have a brief hiatus as well, but we're having some good discussions there on the
Nice.
other podcast. And I forgot the name, Steve, so it's a little late for me. So
That's okay. Yeah.
I think it's Page Chewing Comics, right?
Yeah.
thank you, comics and manga.
Ah, there you go. Okay. And you can find me. Just find me at Page Chewing. You can find me on other social media at Carl D. Albert, but just find me on Page Chewing. And you can find my book, Truth of Crowns, wherever books are sold, hopefully, unless something has gone horribly wrong.
Cool. And you can find me on the Patreon forum as well, and on my YouTube channel, Reading by the Rainy Mountain. And like Steve said, if you'd like to join us for these discussions, consider checking out the Patreon forum where we do all the planning. We'll see everyone in a couple of weeks. Enjoy your reading of this book. Until then, bye.